he was spending an inordinate amount of time in the woods behind his home just by himself.
Hi, I'm Lila.
And I'm Chansey.
And this is For Criming Out Loud.
Happy Halloween week, everybody. It's very exciting.
Happy Halloween.
Yes, that. Hallows Eve. Ethan. Kind of a bummer because it's the end of the spooky season, but we're also excited because we have kind of a different episode for everybody this week. Instead of just one of us telling a story, we both picked our own versions of a Halloween story to tell.
Halloween tale.
And so, yeah, you get to hear from both of us in this episode.
Yep, it's going to be great. Tale. It's the first of its kind.
My case today starts with a ghost story. So, Here we go. Hoo. In the fall of 1986, so take it back, y'all, to the 80s.
No, I'm saying
the Bowen
take
family.
It back now, y'all. Sorry.
Do you want to get sued for singing? What song is that? I can't remember what it's called. That's a great song.
The Cupid Shuffle?
It's a really fun.
Is that Cupid Shuffle?
Yes. No, that's not Cupid Shuffle. It's something similar. Anyways, it's bugging me now, but it's okay. So, the Bowen family, in the fall of 1986, they started experiencing some rather peculiar things in their home. Spooky, if you will. Let's call it spooky. They lived in a small town in Massachusetts called Pepperell, and the Bowen family consisted of Frank Bowen and his two daughters, 15-year-old Tina and her younger sister. I couldn't find a name for her, but that's probably because she was like not really involved in the story, and she's like a minor, so like a minor writer.
Okay.
The family had recently lost their wife/mother, so they were kind of going through a dark period.
That's sad.
Which is sad, yeah. And the girls were really struggling with missing their mom. And so, understandably, they wanted to, like, reach out to her and try and connect with her. You know how people do that when they lose someone. They go to psychics and all sorts of things to try and, like, connect with people that they've lost. So, Tina and her sister, they wanted to contact their mother, and they decided they were going to use a Ouija board to do it. Which I'm just a little too scared to do that.
I'm not a personal believer that Ouija boards bring good spirits. Just personally.
I don't think they bring good vibes.
Not my belief.
Not my
I think
belief
if you're going
either.
to try to talk to your dead mother, there are better ways of doing that do not include Ouija boards. But that's just me.
I agree. So, I mean, that's just what Tina and her sister decided to do. And it didn't really work. But after they did that, weird things started happening in the house. The TV channels would change randomly while they were watching TV. Random items would be moved around and rearranged in their house. Sometimes new items would appear in their house that weren't theirs. Their food started disappearing, like the milk carton would be mysteriously empty. Just weird things. Things
is eerie.
That you could, like, you can, like, explain them away, but, like, they're also just odd when you put them all together, you know? Just weird. Just these kind of ghostly disturbances, if you will. But eventually it started, like, escalating a little bit. But worst of all, towards the end of this ghostly haunting, there were some scary messages written on the walls in mayo and ketchup in the house. So the messages said things like, "Marry me," or like, "I'm in your room, come find me," which is horrifying. That last one gets me. I'm in your room, find me.
Very creative use of mayo and ketchup, though.
Oh, for sure. I kind of get the ketchup, because it looks like blood, so that's, like, kind of scary. But mayo? That's weird. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's strange.
And at one point, there was a family photo pinned to the wall with a knife.
Oh,
And so, I mean, like the milk being gone and like items being moved and the TV changing channels, like you can kind of talk that away and just be like, oh, it
yeah.
must have been
Could
like if I
be
was Frank, I'd be like, it
anything.
could be one of my daughters. It could have been me and I just forgot. It could be just like a short circuit in my TV. There's a lot of explanations. But when there's messages written on the walls and condiments and family photos knifed into the walls, that's a little harder to explain away.
A little different.
Yeah, it's very different. That's not great. Frank believed that his daughters were just playing pranks on each other or on him, and when he confronted them, they said that they weren't, but he didn't believe them because obviously it had to be somebody and it wasn't him. So he was like, they must be doing it. So this had been happening for a while, just these weird things. And on December 8th of 1968, the two girls, Tina and her sister, they came home to find that someone had used the bathroom while they'd been out, and Frank hadn't been home.
Ick.
So Frank was like, that's weird. Somebody's been in my house because that's just not a thing. So he searched the house just to make sure that nobody was home. He was like, I'm just going to look around, make sure, whatever. And when he searched one of the rooms, he opened a wardrobe to make sure that no one was hiding inside.
Oh.
And unfortunately, he was
Oh, no,
wrong.
no,
Somebody
no.
was hiding inside of the wardrobe.
No. That is my worst nightmare. Home
So
intrusion is my
scary.
worst nightmare.
Seriously, so
Who
scary.
does that?
Literally, who? So, this person, they had their face painted, they were dressed in a ninja mask, and they had a Native American style jacket, and most disturbing of all, they were holding a hatchet.
Oh, just casual. Yeah, just in
Just
the
super
closet.
casual, like just
That's
waiting,
awesome.
apparently.
Okay.
So, wielding this hatchet, this person basically took the whole family hostage, forced them all into one bedroom, and then just ran away and hid somewhere inside the house.
What was the point of
So,
that?
like,
Also,
locked them in a bedroom and then just disappeared
you can't
into the house
overpower a
somewhere.
man with a hatchet?
Seriously, that's what I was
Like,
thinking.
really? It's like a boy. It's not like a man.
Yeah, I don't know. Was a small person for sure. And Tina was able to climb through the window and then like climb out and call police. So police came and they were trying to find the culprit because they believed that the culprit was still in the house because they never heard him leave. So it wouldn't be until 2 days later that police found the intruder
Tell me
and
they
he was
left the
still
house.
inside the house.
Did the family
It
leave the
took
house or
them
did they stay there?
I couldn't find that. I looked, but I couldn't find it. I'm assuming they left
You'd have to
because
believe that. There's
like
no way they'd just
it's
stay there.
possible they didn't, but I'd assume just that they felt safer somewhere else until they found him. But 2 days later, they found the intruder hiding in the cellar of the house. It was like an unknown crawl space area, and
Oh.
they arrested him. So, it became pretty clear to the Bowen family that they hadn't been haunted for the past however long. That they'd been watched by this person, and he was pretending to be a ghost or something, messing with them. And they identified this person as 15-year-old Daniel LaPlante. So Daniel LaPlante had been hiding in that triangular space in a corner of their house for a long time. And I couldn't figure out whether or not he'd been there consistently, like living there, or if he just kept breaking into the
Popping in.
house. So I couldn't figure out whether or not like what that was, but he lived nearby, so it wouldn't have been hard for him to like just go and pop in and freak them out for a little bit and then leave if he wanted to do that. So I
It's
couldn't
really
tell.
wild.
So, who was Daniel LaPlante and why did he pick the Bowen family to like torture and pretend like he was haunting. Because he later confessed that he had been watching the family from inside the walls of the house, and he had seen Tina and her sister use the Ouija board. And after he saw that, he started trying to pretend to be a ghost.
So before that, he was just living silently.
He
He's
was
just
just
like, I'm
stalking
here
them.
being really creepy, but I don't want you guys to know.
Yeah,
But now I have a way to contact you.
yeah,
Yeah,
basically.
that's weird.
Yeah. So, for literally, like, he decided to do this for literally no other reason than just because he thought it would be fun to scare these people. So, as we'll find out, police were not unfamiliar with Daniel. They knew Daniel pretty well. This wasn't Daniel's first time breaking in to homes. It wasn't even close to his first time. But let's back up a little bit and learn a little bit more about Daniel, and we'll continue the story. So, Daniel had been born and raised in Townsend, Massachusetts, which was about 15 minutes from Pepperell, where the Bowen family lived. And he grew up with his mother and his stepfather and two brothers. And just to get a picture of what kind of kid he was, every single person in this neighborhood that he grew up in, because he lived there his whole life, they all said that he was creepy or weird. Every single one
Oh,
of the neighbors that was
that's
interviewed.
always a good sign.
And a lot of the articles I read, to be fair, a lot of the articles I read were statements taken from people after they knew what he'd done. We haven't really gotten into it. There's another part of this story. But after everything hashed out, then people started saying stuff like this. So you have to take it with a grain of salt because you never
Hindsight
know.
is
But
2020. Yeah.
also, I actually believe these people based on his track record, and we'll get into it. So, as a kid, even some of his neighbors remember him, even at 6 years old, just being off. One of his neighbors, Jim and Jill, which is like, what a great pairing.
Jim and Jill.
Um, Jim and Jill Jerry. They hired him when he was 6 to just like remove stones from their pumpkin and squash patches just for like change, he wanted to earn some money. And they were like, sure, help us out with our garden a little bit. So one day, while he was out in these fields, he decided to smash every single pumpkin and squash in the field, ruining the crops for absolutely no reason.
That's Willy Wood. What a
That's
rude
really
thing to
rude.
do.
It's a bad thing to do. And like it's not like evil or like anything. It's just not nice. Like what 6-year-old is like, I'm just gonna smash all the pumpkins that I'm supposed to be helping with. That's
I
just weird.
mean, they're out there, but yeah, they're not
Yeah.
the good
And kids
eggs.
do stuff. Kids do stuff like that. It happens. But Jill Jerry, she said that after that she knew there was something wrong with him. So I don't know. And it was the beginning of a bad reputation for him because his behavior grew much worse and his reputation matched his bad behavior. Later in life, Daniel would claim that the reason he'd been behaving badly was his whole life, basically. He blamed everything on this. Was that he had been sexually and psychologically abused by many adults in his life, including his father, his stepfather, and a psychiatrist he had when he was a teenager. So, if that's true, it definitely could have something to do with his behavior, but there's no proof that that's true. It's just something he stated.
Why would like three people in your life all be abusing you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it couldn't happen. It just
It just
seems
seems a little
unlikely.
iffy. I'm like, three people in your life are all doing some kind of abuse to you?
Yeah.
I
And
don't
not only
know.
that, like both your father and your stepfather and the only psychiatrist you ever saw as a teenager.
Yeah, I
It
don't
just
know.
seems weird.
I don't know if I believe that one. I mean, he could be right. I'm not trying to say he's not right. We
Yeah.
can't say it for sure, but
Yeah, we can't say whether or not
seems
he's
hard to
telling the truth or
believe.
not. But that's his claim. That's why his behavior was so terrible. And as a teenager, because his behavior was so bad, Daniel was sent to a psychiatrist. This is a psychiatrist he claims sexually abused him. And that psychiatrist diagnosed him with a hyperactive disorder based on the abnormal behavior he was displaying, his appearance, and his lack of hygiene. So apparently, those things in combination led to some sort of hyperactive disorder. I don't know.
Okay.
Um, so that's kind of interesting. He went to high school in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, which was like 15 minutes away from where he lived. And he played football and he ran track, but he struggled with school because of dyslexia and things like that. So he didn't have really good grades. And everybody that went to school with him said that he was like the typical, like, creepy loner dude, not like somebody that had a lot of friends or that even seemed to want to make friends, even though he was doing sports and stuff.
That
So,
is weird that he would do sports though, because the creepy loner dude that comes to my mind didn't do those things.
yeah, especially not like football. I mean, track is like an individual thing, so I mean, maybe. But football is like, it's a team sport.
Yeah,
That's a
you
lot of
get it up
people.
close and personal.
Yeah. So at this point in LaPlante's life, in his teenage years, he began to regularly break into homes in Townsend in the evenings. It was just his hobby, his pastime. He would steal things like valuables and money, and his neighbors were starting to notice that he was spending an inordinate amount of time in the woods behind his home just by himself. So he
Always
was
a
just
good
starting
sign.
to display some really antisocial, not great behavior. And also, I've said this before, but a person that can break into somebody's home and not care, that they just don't have much of a moral compass left. That's just
Yeah,
not a
no,
thing.
it's
It's not great. So, by 15 years old, he had made a name for himself in the neighborhood as the neighborhood thief. Everybody, like, as soon as a burglary happened in the area, all eyes turned to Daniel. He'd been
he
arrested for
was
it and sent to juvie for it.
suspect number one.
Suspect numero uno. And he started doing things leading up to the story that I started with. He started breaking into homes just to scare people, kind of like what he did to the Bowen family in the
Yeah.
fall of 1986. So he would start breaking in and just moving things around or leaving things for people in order to kind of freak them out. He wasn't like violent towards anybody necessarily, but he was like playing mind games with people. And he wasn't even stealing things sometimes when he broke into these homes, just like trying to scare them. So that's not
Hmm.
great. That's an
Yeah.
escalation. It's not good behavior. And so when he was 15, this is when he became obsessed with Tina Bowen. You remember Tina, from the beginning. He was stalking
Yeah,
her,
that Tina.
that Tina. They both went to the same high school, and LaPlante had taken Tina on one date during a school break. And after the school break, she'd started talking to people about this date she went on, and she heard a rumor from multiple people that LaPlante was facing rape charges. And so she stopped wanting to hang out with him, obviously. I was not able
Uh,
to find whether or not he actually was facing rape charges or not,
Probably not.
but it was a rumor that he was. So, yeah. Obviously, he did take the rejection well because a few weeks later, that's when he started breaking into their home and watching the family,
Uh,
specifically Tina.
yeah.
So, now we're back to where we started in the fall of 1986. He's just done this whole ghost routine on the Bowen family and he's now been arrested. And we jump now to the next fall in October of 1987. And he was still in jail, but he finally gets bailed out by his mom. And his mom had to remortgage their house to get the $10,000 to bail him out of jail. And he's living with his parents now, back home, waiting to go to trial. And while he's like literally waiting to go to trial, he starts committing burglaries again in the neighborhood.
Wow.
Stealing money, stealing just anything of valuable, like anything of value, and he also starts stealing guns from
What a
people's homes.
what a bright light. What a shining star.
He's just like a real gem. Just a real great guy. And mind you, he's now 17. He's not even a legal adult yet. And like he has a rap sheet longer than my arm.
I mean, it's
So
spectacular. Yeah.
it's fantastic. Like, way to go. If your goal was to be like a criminal before you reached adulthood, you did it, bro. You
But
did
just
real
like a
well.
petty criminal.
Just like a
Just
petty thief
yeah, just
for
the
like for
small
no
things
reason.
just to
For
be
no
a
reason.
loser. Just be a weirdo.
Literally. There's like absolutely no reason for him to be doing it. He just does it for fun. And that's what's freaky to me. Is there's
Yeah,
not
it's
it's not
weird.
like he's just doing it for money even. He just enjoys doing it. I mean, obviously the money, like he gets money from it, but like he does it sometimes without even caring about money. Anyways, so on October 14th of 1987, this is like just after he gets out of jail, and he's waiting trial. He he steals two 22 caliber guns from a neighbor's house. And his stepfather finds one of these guns in a laundry basket in their home. I don't even know
Why are
how
you
or
storing
why
it
he
in a
would put it in a
laundry
laundry
basket?
basket. Like maybe it was in his room and he thought that was a good hiding place. I have no idea. I don't know.
What? Okay.
But they confronted him about it and they were like, "Where did this come from?" And he said that he bought it.
Were these parents just like scared for their life? I bet they
I bet
were.
they
I
were.
bet
I
they were
didn't
just
see anything
like,
about it, but they're like,
our son is
this
psycho.
behavior's, yeah, it's escalated to like, it's bad. It's always been bad, but like stealing guns, that's not great. That's scary. So I didn't see anything happening from that, and I don't even know if they took the guns from him necessarily. But they only found one gun, and he stole two, so they could have taken it from him. I don't know. On November 16th of 1987, so like a month later, he burglarized the home of the Gustafson family. What a fun last name. They lived like behind his house, but like through a patch of woods, and then it was their house. So if that makes sense, his house, and then he walks out the back door, and if you keep walking through the woods, eventually you get to the Gustafsons' home.
Okay.
So the Gustafson family, they were just a family in the neighborhood. It was Andrew and Priscilla Gustafson. They had two children, 5-year-old William and 7-year-old Abigail, and they were expecting their third child. So Priscilla was pregnant. And unfortunately for this family, things would not go well for them. On on November 16th, like I was saying, he, LaPlante, broke into their home and just took some stuff from their house. And then he left. So no big deal. Whatever.
Okay.
But
Did they
a
notice?
couple weeks later, they did notice. Yes. They didn't know it was him necessarily, but like I said, he had a reputation. So they kind of assumed that it was him. I don't know if police were involved or not. I didn't say in the articles I read, but it's possible. Who knows? I
Hmm.
think if they had known for sure, he probably would have been arrested. So I don't think that police were involved just based on that, but because he did not get arrested for that. Um, but a couple weeks later, after he broke into their house the first time, he decides to break in again. So on December 1st of 1987, he walks through the woods behind his home toward the Gustafson residence. He's armed with a 22 caliber gun. So he took a gun with him, which I think is odd. Why would you take a gun with you?
Why do you need a
Because he
gun?
didn't think they'd be home. He thought it was an empty house.
Or so he
That's what
says.
he said later. So he broke into the home. He was in the process of stealing from them again when Priscilla and her son William came home. And at this point, in his statement later, LaPlante says He was surprised because, like he said, he wasn't expecting Priscilla or her children to walk into the home while he was there. He thought he was alone. And he said he thought about trying to escape by just jumping out the window, but instead he chose to confront Priscilla
Oh.
with the gun.
Oh, awesome.
So he, holding the gun on her and her son, forced her into her room and put her son in the closet in the bedroom and told him to stay where he was. And
Okay.
then LaPlante, just trigger warning, this gets really bad. So if you don't want to hear it, just fast forward a few minutes or a few seconds, not minutes. So at this point, after William's in the closet, LaPlante decides to tie Priscilla to the bed and he gags her with one of his socks, which is just disgusting.
Yuck.
And after that, he rapes her and then
Oh my
immediately kills her
gosh.
by shooting her in the head twice.
What?
Crazy escalation from anything he's ever done. Even the ghost faking in the Bowens home.
I'm sorry.
It's
You said
crazy.
that she was pregnant, right?
Yes, she was pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Horrible. And it's not, I don't even know if that's the worst part. So after that, he took William out of the closet, took him to the bathroom, and then drowned him in the tub,
What?
which is just horrible. I didn't, yeah. When I started researching this, I did not realize how dark it was, like how horrible this story was.
I literally don't have words. I'm in shock.
Yeah. And it's still not over. So he finished killing both William and his mother Priscilla, and as he's leaving the home, the second Gustafson child gets home from school, Abigail. She walks in the
No.
door and sees him there.
No.
And he takes her into the bathroom and drowns her as well.
That is so personal. Why drown them like that?
He had the
Why?
gun. Like why drown them? So horrible and just like I don't understand it. I can't understand that. Ugh.
Not at all. Not at all.
No.
I literally want to vomit right now.
It's so bad. So after he kills basically this entire family, he just walks out the back door, walks back through the woods and goes to his house, and then attends his niece's birthday party a little bit later as if nothing had happened. His family even said later that they noticed nothing off about him during the party that afternoon. Nothing seemed different. He
Well,
was
he
completely
was already
unfazed.
crazy, so I guess that doesn't surprise me that he could just act like he didn't just murder 4 people.
Yeah.
But
Meanwhile, while Daniel is at a birthday party for his niece, Andrew Gustafson is trying to contact Priscilla. He's trying to contact his wife, and he hasn't heard from her all afternoon, and he's super worried. And so he goes home to try and check on her and make sure things are okay. And the house was completely silent and all the lights were off when he got home. And he said that he knew immediately that something was wrong.
well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you would. You expect to come
Yes.
home to your wife and your 2 kids,
And
and
2
that's loud,
kids.
and yeah,
Yep.
there's people, and the lights should be on. And so he walks into the bedroom, and he finds his wife dead, lying face down on the bed. And he said he immediately ran out of the house and called the police and said that he didn't want to search the rest of the house because he was afraid he'd find his children dead. And
That
he
is
would have
completely
if he'd searched the
understandable.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who wants
totally
to see
understandable.
all of your family dead?
Yeah, nobody wants that, and he definitely didn't need that image on top of his wife being dead in their bed. That's just not a thing he needed. But the police were immediately called. Obviously, they came, and it wasn't hard for them at all to come up with suspects, namely one suspect, the neighborhood screw up and burglar Daniel LaPlante. So they immediately start searching the crime scene. And they find in the woods behind the Gustafsons' house a still wet t-shirt and gloves that LaPlante had used to kill the children. and they still had his scent all over them. So they used police dogs to track the scent, and the scent went right back to the LaPlante's home. So they were like, well, that's really all we need to bring him in for questioning for sure. And so that evening, the police literally brought him in and interrogated him. And he wouldn't confess to anything. He said he had nothing to do with it. And they didn't have enough proof at that time to arrest him for the murders, so they just let him go. And they were planning on going back the next day to question him more. But when Daniel saw them coming the next day, he jumped off the porch of the LaPlante home and literally ran. Like, he made a run for it. And they couldn't find him for about 24 to 48 hours. I couldn't find an
Oh my
exact time.
gosh.
So a
This
manhunt
kid deserves to
ensued.
rot in hell. Get
Yes,
him.
really though. He's the worst. So even though he was literally on the lam, he is running for his life from police. He could not break into people's homes. So he went to the next town over to Pepperell, and he starts a burglary spree in Pepperell while he's on the lam.
Yeah, that's not gonna
That's
raise any suspicions. They're not gonna
ridiculous.
catch him.
So, yeah, so by December 3rd, which is 2 days later, 2 days after the murders happen, police find him hiding under a dumpster in Pepperell, and they arrest him.
No dip, you idiot child.
Idiot child. 17 years old. 17. That just, to me, that is mind-blowing. What 17-year-old
Even thinks
cracks
about
like
that.
that? I just can't.
No. Well, and the thing that's so terrible is it's just so, like, senseless. Those are the cases I can't handle. If somebody's like, I don't know, if somebody does something and they're just, I don't know, when it seems like it's for fun, or if there was another option and it's like they hypothetically didn't intend to do it, but they're just like, why the freak not? Those are the cases that get me. Because it just feels
Yeah.
so avoidable. It's not like they, like, premeditated it. It's not like they went, I don't know, and maybe he did. I mean, he brought a gun with him. But it just
Yeah,
seems like
that's the
in the
one thing
moment
that
he had
seems
a
weird.
choice. He could
Oh, yeah.
leave and they would never have seen him, or confront them, and he chose that. And it's so senseless.
It is
Why?
so senseless, and it makes me think about those rumored rape charges against him.
Yeah.
Like, maybe there were no charges, but like, he did rape a pregnant woman in her home.
And kill
Like,
her
that
and
is
her
something
children.
that would have, yeah, there would be escalating behavior to that sort of sexual assault. That doesn't just happen. So it makes me think that there were things that weren't maybe talked about that were happening with him. I don't know. I didn't find anything, but it's just crazy. Like, even it seems like such an extreme leap to go from like breaking into people's homes and even watching them to like actually killing them with no provocation.
Yeah.
It's just
It's
crazy.
not the same crime at
It's
all.
crazy. No. And it's definitely like he was escalating. He was getting bolder with his crimes. So I guess it doesn't shock me, but it does seem like it wasn't like he got caught red-handed with like jewels in his hand in somebody's house and then he pulled a gun and shot them and then ran away.
No. No.
It was so much more than that.
It
So
was methodical. It was
just
gross.
terrible. It makes me think that it was premeditated in some way. Like, why would he bring a gun if it wasn't a little bit premeditated? But I guess we'll never
Yeah,
know
and
because
go
he's
back to
never
the same
said.
house that he already burglarized.
Yeah, he already stole from them. Why go back? That doesn't make sense. Did you not get what you wanted the first time? You had plenty of time because he only broke in when people weren't there. Anyways.
Yeah.
So, a year after his arrest in 1988, he was sentenced to 3 life sentences for the murder of the Gustafsons, and he was tried as an adult. So it was an adult sentence. It
Good.
wasn't
Yeah.
a kid sentence. And so he's been in jail ever since. And in 2017, he had a resentencing hearing where he basically asked for a reduction of his sentence
No.
because he was like, I was a juvenile and I should be able to get parole after 30 years instead of 45 years, which is what the original sentencing was. And the judge um, quickly and swiftly denied him his request.
Yeah, no.
um, they had a psychiatrist go and evaluate him, and the psychiatrist told the judge that LaPlante wasn't remorseful at all for his crimes. Not
Oh, I
even a
believe that.
smidgen.
I mean, if you're trying to get out of jail, you're not remorseful. Not even a
Yeah,
smidge.
not even one little bit. And so the judge reaffirmed his sentence of the 3 life imprisonments with the possibility of parole after 45 years. So, I mean, in what is it now? Like 12 years, he can probably ask for parole, but I honestly doubt that he'll ever be given parole based on his crimes.
I
So,
hope not.
yeah,
He's
so he'll
unable
just
to control
probably
himself.
literally not. He proved that time and time again. I know he was young, but like that just isn't an excuse. So, yeah, Daniel
Well,
LaPlante is rotting away.
the only thing that I can think about after that whole case was just the fact that his parents found a gun and did not do anything. He was
Yeah.
already being charged with crimes at that point. If they had reported that to anybody, I speak with no authority when I say this, but I swear that there's things that happen when there's a criminal that's escalating like that. Like when instead of just robbing houses, he's now acquiring guns. Like,
I
I'm
mean,
pretty sure there's action that is taken.
I know that when a person is on probation and they're found with a weapon, then that's like punishable by more jail time. But I don't know, like he was just awaiting trial. I don't know if he was on probation or not. I can't remember like seeing anything about it. But I don't know. You would think so. You would think. All I know is that he did steal 2 of the guns. So even if they took one, if they only found one, he still had another one. You know?
Right. I don't know. And I know it's
I would
obviously
have searched
not the
all of his
parents'
stuff.
fault. And maybe they did.
Yeah.
Maybe they were great parents and he was just a bad egg, but it's not their fault. But I just am like, it just seems so stupid that they literally found a gun and nothing happened. It was like, just keep being you, bud.
Keep doing what you're doing. Ridiculous. So,
But at the end of the day, your choices are your own and people
they
can't
are, and
control people.
he made the
So,
worst ones. Truly the worst decisions a person can make. So, I am glad he's sitting where he's sitting, and I
yeah,
hope he
he
stays
deserves to
there.
be there forever. That's honestly a person that I think, for me, capital punishment would apply to.
Oh yeah, to me too. I'm surprised. I
That is
think
the
that
kind
if
of
he had
case in
been,
which I would have no remorse being like, you're toast,
yeah,
bud. Bye bye now.
yeah, I think if he had been like a legitimate adult, I think he would have been facing the death penalty. Depending, I don't know if Massachusetts even had it then or not. I'm
I
sure
don't
they
know.
did in the 80s, but like I think he would have been facing it if he'd been old enough too, because those crimes are horrific. Like just like not what you expect when you find out he's 17. He's not even a real person. He wasn't even a real person at that time. You're not a real person when you're 17. You're just like the idea
No.
of a person.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah,
Okay.
there you have it.
Wow.
Daniel LaPlante.
All of that was
It was a lot. I'm
truly not
sorry.
what I wanted to hear, but
I apologize.
okay.
When I started
Um
researching the case, I only knew about the ghost story at the beginning, and then I started researching it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this gets so dark.
yeah, no, that's a lot, but thank you for your story. Yeah.
You're welcome. It's your turn, Lila. Go ahead. Tell us your spooky story.
Mine is still a little dark, but not quite your level, so I guess it's good that we're going to end on mine and not yours. Um so today my story is not, I mean, actually weird parallel. It also has to do with multiple people being killed in the same house. So there's that weirdness, but mine is a well-known story and it took place quite a few years ago. So today we're going to cover, well, I'm going to cover the Villisca Axe murders. And to just set the stage, Villisca is a town that's in the southwest corner of Iowa. And at the time of this story, we are back in the June of 1912. So this
The
was
June.
a decent amount of time ago. And we are specifically zooming in to the home of Josiah B. Moore and Sarah Moore and their 4 children: Herman Montgomery, who was 11, Mary Catherine, who was 10, Arthur Boyd, who was 7, and Paul Vernon, who was 5. And all of those sound like really old-timey names.
They really do.
So
It
they
just
did a good
plopped me
job.
right into 1912. Well
Yep,
done.
there you go. And the Moore family, they were well known in Villisca. The dad, Josiah, owned a John Deere franchise, and he was like, part of the community, doing his thing. They all knew the Moores, and they were well liked in the community.
That's good.
So being like a part of the community, they were actually involved in a children's program at the Presbyterian Church on June 9th of 1912. And so they go, and they actually end up going with their whole family, and they also take Mary Catherine, their 10-year-old daughter's 2 friends with them to the program because she invited them to stay the night with them and hang out, I guess. Just having a
Sleepover.
good time. Yeah. Just best buds. And so those 2 were Ina Stillinger and her sister Lena. And so they go with the family to this Presbyterian little gathering children's program. And that ends at 9:30 at night, and the Moores come home and they go to bed at like 10. And
Solid night.
yeah, everything seems fine and dandy. Nothing's out of place until the next morning, June 10th, where their neighbor Mary Peckham, who was, in my opinion, either a very doting and concerned neighbor or a very nosy one, she
One of the
notices.
two.
Yeah, I don't know which one. I'm going to go with the first one, but it's also possible she was just very nosy. But she notices the Moore family, like, she hasn't seen anybody from their family come out of their house to do chores. And I guess this is atypical. Like, they have chickens that need tending and stuff. And so she goes over and knocks on the door, and nobody answers. And she tries to get into the house, and the door's locked. And she, helps the family out. She lets the family's chickens out. And then she calls Ross Moore, who is Josiah's brother. And Josiah's whole family actually lives in this town. Like, this is where he grew up with his
Okay.
parents and his
It's got
siblings. So he has
roots.
a ton of siblings in this town. I guess Ross Moore was the one to call. So Ross
Cool.
shows up, and he also tries to knock, pound, and yell to get somebody to answer in the house. And once again, there's no answer. And so he uses his own copy of the house key and lets himself in. And he first goes to the guest bedroom where he finds a very terrible sight. He finds Ina and Lena are both in this guest bedroom, and they're lying on the bed, and they are both dead. Ross goes back out of the house to where Mary Peckham, their neighbor, had been waiting, and they call the local peace officer, Hank Horton, to come and search the house and investigate what has happened. So he arrives shortly, and he finds that the whole Moore family was dead and had been bludgeoned to death. So Hank quickly
Dang.
calls for some backup. And doctors come, sheriff comes, and actually the whole town comes. And we'll get there in just a second. But it
The whole
basically just
town.
turns into a hubbubaloo for the whole town.
That's crazy because a lot of these old-timey cases, like Hinterkaifeck, which we will definitely cover at some point, but people just, like, back in the day, they just let people walk through the house and the crime scene, and just, like,
Yeah,
there's no way to know what forensic evidence is actual forensic evidence or things that people tracked in later.
yeah.
So it's
And
just
it's
a
wild.
nightmare.
And I don't
They
know
didn't
who'd
have
want
any
to see
protocol.
this.
Yeah.
So doctors came. They found that the murders had taken place probably somewhere between 12 to 5 a.m. This is a while ago. They can't really narrow it down, but it's sometime in the early morning hours. And then the investigators easily found the murder weapon because they had left it behind. It was an axe that actually
Oh my
belonged to
gosh.
Josiah, and it was found in the guest room with the two family friends. And it was just leaning against a wall, nonchalantly, had just left the weapon.
Yeah, he didn't bring his own weapon.
No.
He just
Nope.
took it from their house.
It was the family axe. Yeah.
That's insane.
So, following the evidence, the investigation led them to believe that the killer had possibly hidden in the attic and waited for the Moore family to come home and fall asleep before he snuck downstairs. And they believed this because there was like cigarette butts up there, I guess. And they believed that he'd just kind of been hanging out, chilling in their house, possibly. So they believe he had been like hanging out in their attic. And once he heard everybody was asleep, he had come down out of the attic and started by attacking and killing Josiah and Sarah. And so Josiah, he received more blows than any other victim, and his face was so brutalized that he was unrecognizable.
Oh my goodness.
And he
That
was,
seems so personal.
yeah, it does. And he was believed to be the first victim. And what's interesting about this is, except for one of this household, they believe that all of them were asleep when they were killed, which doesn't make any sense to me because Sarah is sleeping right next to him.
That would make so much noise.
And
To kill
like,
somebody right next to you with an axe?
yeah, and
That would be
we'll loop back to
loud.
this, but I don't understand because none of them had any self-defense wounds. Like, it didn't seem
That's
like
wild.
anybody except for one was awake and fought back.
Okay.
So he starts with Josiah, they think, and then goes to Sarah. And Sarah, the interesting thing about her is that she's the only one that he uses the sharp end of the axe with. What they notice with all the other victims is this person used the blunt end of the axe
So,
to
like,
kill
not the
the rest of the
side,
family.
like, he's holding the handle, but instead of hitting them with the sharp side, he hits them
Turn
with, like, the
around.
blunt
Yes.
end. Okay, I just wanted to
Yes.
make sure I was visualizing that correctly.
Yep. And so, but Sarah, for whatever reason, had actually been like the sharp end had been used to kill her.
Okay, so that was different.
Yep.
And that's the wife,
And
right? That's Josiah's wife.
yes. So they start with the parents, whoever this is. And then um the only other interesting thing to note about Josiah and Sarah, and just to kind of give you like a picture of how intense this was, they actually found marks in the ceiling where the axe had been swung back so hard to then be swung down that it had literally left cuts into their ceiling because he was swinging it so hard up to then get enough
Force
force to go
and
back down
momentum.
with.
That's insane.
That's a lot. That's a
That
lot
is
of
so
like,
much. That is
that's not just
so.
like, that's like intense. It's like your
That's like
whole body is,
overkill.
yeah, being used to brutalize people. So after they leave the parents' room, they then go to Herman, Mary Catherine, Arthur, and Paul. And they're all killed similar to Josiah. They're just bludgeoned to death, like I said, with a blunt end. And afterwards, then the killer goes back to the master bedroom and again attacked the parents before then moving to the guest bedroom. So after he kills all the children, the two guest children are still alive, and he goes back into the parents' bedroom and bludgeons them.
That just doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. I don't know if he heard something. I don't know if somehow one of them was alive and he heard something move.
That could be it.
And so he went upstairs to check. Also, not to be super gory, but is it not true that like dead bodies can move after they're dead?
I mean, they can, but like,
And
I don't really
so
know what the circumstances
I
would
don't
be for
know,
that to
but I
happen.
wonder if there was like a noise and he was like, I need to go take care of that.
I mean, that's
I
the
don't
only
know.
thing I can think of. That makes sense.
So after he goes back to the master bedroom, he then goes to the guest bedroom and he attacks Ina and Lena. And it's believed that Ina died first in her sleep, but Lena actually had like defensive wounds and they think that she was awake and fought back.
My
And they
goodness.
also believe that this was possible because she was missing underwear, which actually
Oh,
initially led people to believe that there was some kind of sexual assault, but they ruled that out later.
maybe she was fighting too much or something and he just killed her.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know why you're removing underwear either. It's a really weird detail. So,
That is really weird.
so at this point, the whole family has been killed and the killer is now alone in the house. And it is believed that then he walks around the home and covers all of the mirrors, which apparently was common practice for wakes and funerals at the time.
I did not know that.
He also covers all the victims with cloth or clothing and closes all of the blinds in the house. He then washes his hands in a basin and makes himself a meal
He
of
eats
beans and
their
bread.
food?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
And
I
then
hate
he
when killers
leaves.
do that. I
I
hate
know,
that.
it's just so eerie. Really weird that you can make yourself at home in
So
a
gross.
house full of, yeah. Makes himself a meal, and then he leaves and locks the door behind him. And like I said, what's truly terrible about this is that the whole town swarms in on this house. So you can imagine the scene that they're seeing. And actually, in one of the sources that I said, it like said that like they when the investigators went up into the master bedroom, there was like one of the victim's shoes, they did not specify who like that had been filled with blood, and that the killer was believed to have like stepped on and sloshed the blood all over the floor. Like that's how brutal, like it's a brutal scene.
Yeah, that's
There's
really
blood
graphic and
everywhere.
gory.
And so yeah, so these people are just coming in droves to come walk through this house and look at everything. And they were touching everything. Like there was no holding them back. It was just like, sure, do what you will. Um, some even were grabbing the murder weapon and moving it around and
Oh my
getting their
gosh.
freaking fingerprints and DNA. And not that that was a thing in 1912,
But like
but like
still.
now it could have been a thing if they still had the murder weapon.
Yeah.
Anyway, so nothing in the house is kept sacred, and I even found that apparently some people even took pieces of Josiah's skull with them before they left as
Why?
a souvenir.
Why would you do that?
I
That's
cannot even
monstrous.
imagine. That's disgusting.
That is
So the situation,
horrifying.
yeah, got so out of hand that eventually the National Guard was called in to restore peace and get the people the freak out of
Oh my
there.
gosh. The National Guard had to be called in. They didn't have enough local police to help.
No, no. So once the investigation is actually allowed to start, once they kick all the people out, they quickly rule out burglary because nothing was taken from the house and all the money is left. So that was not a motive for the
I
murders.
mean, yeah. No.
They did know that both the Stillinger's girls' bodies had been moved after they were killed. Ina had been set on her stomach, and Lena had been positioned without her undergarments so that her genitals were exposed.
He like posed them.
Yeah, so I don't know, and it almost kind of seems like he had some kind of a fascination with them over the rest of the members of the
Yeah.
family, which is interesting. I don't know. Gross. But
Super gross.
they continue to investigate like the property, and they find that in the barn there's clues there that lead them to believe that it's possible that the killer could have been there watching the family for some time. And what really leads them to believe this is that they find like a gas lamp and it's set to the lowest setting that it could be so that it would have like emanated light, but not been bright enough that from outside you could see it.
Okay.
So
So it was like a
hypothetically,
sneaky lantern.
somebody's crouching in their barn using a lantern to just have it light enough that they can see themselves, but nobody from the outside would be able to see them.
That's creepy. That's really creepy.
Yeah. So basically, there's no clues though as to who it could have been. There's just nothing.
I mean,
They don't
yeah.
have DNA obviously at this point, so there's just nothing at the scene to lead anybody to believe that it could be anybody. So there were quite a few suspects in this case, and there was never any conviction. Um, there was William Mansfield, who was believed to have been a hired gun, basically,
A
and was
hitman.
arrested. Yeah, really. They thought he had been hired to kill this entire family.
That's
Um,
bonkers.
and they believed that he was like hypothetically linked to several other axe murders across the country. And there's quite a bit of like evidence and info, I guess, on this as I was researching this, but in the end, there just wasn't enough to go on to convict him. And there was also a witness claiming to see him in a restaurant at the time of the murders. So he was released.
So he had like an alibi of sorts.
Yeah. And then there was Henry Lee Moore, who is not related to the victims,
Oh,
and he was a serial killer at the time. And his murder weapon of choice was also an axe, but in the end, they ruled him out. So wasn't him either.
wasn't Henry Lee Moore.
And then there was Frank F. Jones, and he was a senator at the time. And it was
Ooh,
believed,
conspiracy.
yeah, he believed that Josiah had stolen business from him when he had started his John Deere franchise. And so they actually think that Frank was the one that was hypothetically believed to have hired William Mansfield to take
Okay,
them
I
out,
could see that. Like that seems like a senator would hire a hitman. I could see that instead of doing
to
it
do his dirty
themselves.
work. Yeah,
Yeah, seems like something right out of a movie.
possibly. And then they also looked at Paul Mueller, and he was a suspect in the West Brookfield, Massachusetts family murder. And he was wanted for over a year. And I think that year overlaps with when the Moore family was murdered.
Okay. Okay.
So he's actually believed to have been involved in 14 different incidents with 59 different victims. So if that's
Ooh,
true, it's very possible it could have been him.
yeah.
But once again,
Sounds
like,
like it.
there wasn't enough known about his whereabouts to ever confirm that he was in the area or that it could have been him. Um,
Hmm.
but there was one suspect that stood out the most to people, and that was Reverend George Kelly. And Kelly was a traveling minister who was described as peculiar and possibly like having a mental breakdown as like a teenager. So people basically said he's been really nutty for quite a while now.
He's crazy, crazy.
And he was like accused of peeping on women and asking women for inappropriate things, such as like to pose nude for him. I don't know for what
That's just
purpose, but
gross.
yeah. And so he just so happened to leave town right at 5 a.m. the morning that the murders were discovered.
That is
And
suspicious.
yeah. And so he was brought up on charges of murder, and he actually confessed to it in court. He said,
Okay.
"Yes, I did it." And nobody believed his confession.
Why not? He confessed. He was there.
From what I gather, he was like the kind of sicko that would have like claimed this, is what it seemed like, and people didn't
Oh.
think he actually did it.
I mean, I get that, but with lacking another suspect, I mean, arrest the guy who said he did it.
That's what you'd think. But yeah, I've never heard of a case in which they're like, yeah, I did it. And then everybody else is like, no, we're good.
No, I don't think so.
Pass.
Thanks, though. Thanks for the confession.
Yeah. So, for the weeks following this, he became really fascinated with the case, and he wrote like many letters to the police about the case. And in response, the police would ask him a few questions to see if he knew more about the murders than he had let on, something that would maybe catch him, like that nobody else would have known. I mean, I feel like everybody would have known everything because they were all over the freaking
Yeah,
house,
like they went in the house.
but they were still trying to catch him in some kind of a, yeah, trap. But overall, like his answers, while strangely detailed, seemed like he had just made it up according to what he had imagined had happened in the house that night.
Okay. All right.
2 years later, he was arrested for sending inappropriate material through the mail to a woman who had applied for a job as his secretary. So they're like, we're arresting you. You've had enough offenses. And he actually just ended up being institutionalized. Then again, at this point, it was like speculated whether or not he could have been the one to murder the Moore family. And he again confessed. This time, though, it was after hours of interrogation. And then he was taken to court again, and in the end was acquitted.
Well, they never got it to stick, so maybe he didn't do it.
I don't know. That was their best suspect, and nobody was ever arrested. That's like all we know. It was just a crazy axe murder, and they don't know who did it.
That's so
And
wild.
for some people, it seems like this was a string of one of many, and like, because if you look at this time, there was a string of axe murders across the United States. And some people believe it was isolated incidents, and some people believe they were all connected.
I feel like I've heard of this like in a different case
Yeah,
because I feel
it's a
like I see
theory.
both sides. Like I see like that is really crazy and coincidental that like whole families are being axed to death across the country. But then at the same time it's like I feel like an axe is like a pretty typical weapon of choice in 1915 or whatever because they're everywhere. Everybody has an axe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
especially if you just use the homeowner's axe.
Yeah. If you
Really
just like if
accessible.
you're looking for a weapon on site of your planned murders,
Yeah.
like there's gonna be an axe around, and that's a pretty handy weapon.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I see both sides of that. I could see it being either
So
thing.
I will say this though, there's like one thing to me that kind of stood out as I was doing my research. I don't even think I like paused on this long enough to, but I'll go back. He locks the door as he leaves their house, which you'd have to do from the outside, meaning he had a house key. So
Yeah, I actually
either
remember thinking that.
either he was familiar enough, like it seems weird to me out of all the objects in a house that you'd find a house key. I don't know if he just happened upon it really easily or if he was familiar enough with them as people. I guess if he'd watched them for days before attacking them,
Yeah,
maybe he would
that's
know
true.
where they kept the house key or who had it
He
on
could
their
have
person,
he could have stolen
or
it at a different time, like if
I don't
he'd
know.
been in the house before.
But I thought that was interesting. I was like, hmm. And then there was like a split second when I was doing my research that I was like, the brother Ross had a house key just on his
What
person,
if it
ready to
was
go,
him? He just like
which
walked
seemed
straight in
weird.
even though it was locked.
And like went straight to the bedroom with the little girls
And
instead of
yeah.
to the rest of the house.
Yeah, instead of going to try and find his brother.
Yeah, which seems weird. I don't know. Maybe that was just the closest bedroom. I don't know. But I was kind of
Maybe.
like, Ross, you're suspicious.
You're sus, Ross.
I don't know. Anyway, so now to this day, you can actually go and see the Villisca Axe Murder House.
Oh my
And in
goodness.
fact, you can get tours of it and even stay overnight there if you'd want to.
No, thank you.
That is, if you're willing to pay a small fee of $400 a night.
Oh my goodness, that's expensive.
Yeah, it's a pretty penny if you want to be creeped out of your mind. Um, and it's actually like one of the most haunted places in the United States
I could
because
see that.
like people that stay in the house, they say that they hear things such as like the faint screams of children or other just like disturbances throughout the night.
I can't
And
even doubt that.
actually most people that go there say that they had some sort of experience in the house.
That's crazy because a lot of times people like it's a pretty even split. between people who just like want to believe it so they hear stuff, and then other people who are like, I didn't hear a thing. That was
Yeah.
not scary at all.
But
So for a
basically,
lot of them to say, yikes.
everybody has said that they have some sort of experience. And so in 2014, there was a man, Robert Stephen Larson Jr., who was 37, and he went to go stay overnight in this house. And he went with a group of friends for what they call recreational paranormal experience.
Ooh.
So I guess that just
Very
means they
fun.
wanted, some kind of paranormal experience. And so that night, he was alone in his bedroom, and for whatever reason, the rest of the group was outside. And I guess they were pretty legitimate ghost hunters because he gets on their like two-way radios and calls for help. And when his friends come to his aid, they found him lying on the bedroom floor with a stab wound to his chest that was self-inflicted.
Stabbed himself in the
He
chest?
stabbed himself in the chest, but then called for help.
Help me. I stabbed myself in the chest.
And what's really eerie about this is this actually happened at 12:45 a.m. in the morning. And if you remember, this is right about the time when the Moore family was originally murdered.
Oh my gosh.
And so some people find it to be a really strange coincidence
That is a
because
strange coincidence.
Larson is actually rushed to the hospital and makes a full recovery, but he refuses to ever make a statement about that night.
I wouldn't either. It was
So there
probably
you
a
go.
ghost that stabbed him.
There's your spooky end of the story. Maybe it really is haunted.
Maybe
Those spirits are probs not at rest.
I would guess definitely not. They were murdered in a brutal way.
So there you
Oh
have
my
it.
goodness. That is spooky. You chose a good one. The Villisca axe murderers. Or a murderer.
Yep. Axe murders.
Yep. And Daniel LaPlante. Those are our two stories, everybody. You're welcome. I hope those were Halloweeny enough.
Tip of the week. Stay safe this Halloween week. Be safe out there.
Have fun, but be safe.
Don't do anything that would get you killed. Just general life rule.
And if you think you're being haunted, check your walls. Because you might not be being haunted. You might be being stalked.
You never know.
You never know.
Stay frosty, y'all.
See you next week. Happy Halloween.